what we need to do is to remember that our relationship with God is something that is inherent in every aspect of our lives. We tend to put God in a box and go, here he is on Sunday morning. Bringing up a family, being married, working are all spiritual activities. Bringing up your family may be more important than going to Bible class on a particular Wednesday night, because your family comes first. The person who can't keep his family together shouldn't have a role in the ecclesia, is what Paul says to Timothy. You might be wife-centered, you might be sports-centered, you might be enemy-centered. I discovered that I was church-centered, which is a good thing. My whole life was built around the ecclesia, but I wasn't God-centered. And that was what I believe God was really trying to teach me there, was to be God-centered. And it's a very subtle difference, but my attitude was really different because now I was serving God.
Okay, welcome everyone to episode 5 of Valley to Victory podcast. And today we have a special guest, Robert Prins, all the way from New Zealand. And this is our first New Zealand visitor. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast. We are excited for the conversation. We will talk about a lot of things. I see nice posters in the background, all about the books that you have written with God's help and your wife's help and your family's help. So I'm excited to be here and I want to thank you so much for coming on. How about you say a few things about yourself, where you from, what do you do? Just a bit of a background for anyone listening who might not know you yet.
Okay. Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for having me. It's a real honour to be with you tonight, especially from halfway across the world, exactly 12 hours apart, which is quite exciting. Yeah, so a bit about myself. Yeah, I'm Robert. I live in Auckland, New Zealand, member of the Pakuranga Ecclesia. Yeah, I've been, as far as a trade goes, I've been an engineer all my life, fitter and turner. So I worked with steel and other metals and then plastics for quite a while. And at the moment, I am actually off work. I have long COVID, so I'm spending my time, as much time as I can, with the health, writing. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Married to Sharon, lovely wife, and we have 4 children, son-in-law and a daughter-in-law, and 3 granddaughters, all under
Wow.
3. Yeah. So,
What a blessing. What a fantastic story.
yeah.
And thank you so much for your background. I think we might go back to the beginning, to the start of your journey of faith. Tell us a bit about your baptism and how that came apart.
Okay. It actually started a lot earlier. Can I go back to the very beginning? I was born
Of
at a
course.
very young age,
Yeah.
and when I was born, I had a major operation. I was flown from one hospital to another city. My mum was left in the room with another lady, and I had a major life-saving operation on my esophagus. So I also had a club foot. So with those issues through my childhood, especially at primary school, especially probably when I was about 7 through to 10 or something, I really noticed that because I couldn't run as fast as the other kids. I was always getting out of breath and that sort of thing. Um, and so from that stage, I think I really started to learn to trust in God more than in my own strength. I think that was the beginning of God really calling me to Him. Also, I mean, one of the real blessings that I never actually knew about was that my grandmother used to come and visit me in hospital and pray for me every day, and I bet that
Wow.
made a big difference too. Yeah, so that was that, and then when I was about 12, I joined a rowing club, and just down the road from us. So we went out in skiffs and things like that, like the 4s and the 8s and those sort of things. And we rode up and down the river around our place. And I remember there was sort of a big turning point in my life. I was the coxswain, so I was just the boy that sat in the back and yelled at the rowers because I had a decent voice. And I remember going to the national champs one year. We didn't particularly do very well. But as soon as our races were over, all my crews went and partied. They all got drunk. I went to bed in the caravan and woke up the next morning and I heard all these exploits about the stupid things they'd done, and the cowpats of spew lying everywhere, and it was really disgusting. And it was then that I went, this is not what I want. I want God in my life. I don't want to be like this. And much as I really enjoyed rowing, yeah, that sort of life was not for me. And that's when I committed my life to God. So I was probably about 12 years old. And that commitment carried on. And I was baptized at 16. And I think, so yeah, so like the beginning of my conversion came about probably at 12. Again, a bit more at 16. And then I think later on as well, we'll probably talk about it later on, but there were some serious trials where God just moved in me again and did more work turning my heart toward Him. So I think baptism's a really important step, but it's not the one big thing that says this is the way to God, because I think God's using us right through our entire lives to be able to bring us to Him.
Yeah, my dad always says,
Not sure question.
no, you hit the nail on the head. My dad always says baptism is an outward conviction of an inward faith, and I think that is quite a fitting phrase. That is exactly what it is. Yeah, you've been convicted. You've made a step. You said in front of a lot of people, "Yes, I want to go this way," and I see that you've had that since a young age, and that's quite a profound, age to already have decided and been like, "Hey, okay, I'm different. Okay, I have problems. I'm not like the other people, and I want to change my life because with God I am accepted. With Jesus, I'm okay, and these other people that they make my life really difficult." So it's a very powerful message and story for everyone who's going through those trials, who feels alone, who feels like they are the outcast in society. Well, Jesus was as well, and we try to imitate Jesus every day. So that is really, really powerful. Thank you so much. I think we can continue on to maybe a moment that you've been through, a moment going on from when you said, "Hey, yes, I want to follow God, I want to follow Jesus," where you were tested in your faith, something specific where you went through a hard time.
Yeah, I had that. Probably the hardest time in my life was um, I was about 23-ish. Yeah, 23 to 25. Actually, no, maybe that make that about 25-ish. Um, Obviously, I've been baptized sort of almost 10 years, around about that time, and very involved in the meeting, very involved in everything. I've run the youth group for ages. I'd just taken over running the Sunday school. My brother and my sister had been baptized, and they were in the meeting as well. And yeah, married. Our oldest son was 3 years old, and so yeah, I took over Sunday school at that stage. And yeah, it probably began when I had a Sunday school teachers meeting, and we brainstormed lots of ideas for Sunday school. It was a great meeting, and then someone leaked, I suppose you could say, the details of that meeting to the ABs, and it was a brainstorming session. But anyway, I was taken to a meeting of the ABs and really given a real thorough going over and a grilling. And I don't blame them, like I don't hold it against them or anything like that. I'm just telling you the story. But it really plunged me into a couple of years of where am I? What am I doing here? About the same time, my brother and my sister left the meeting, and that I didn't think it would make such a big impact on me, but it did. And also another couple of good friends left the meeting as well, all for different reasons. And yeah, I just had a couple of really hard years. Like driving home from that meeting, I was seriously tempted to drive into a lamppost or something and end it all. But I had a wife and children at home, and that won through, and I'm glad it did, because that would have been, the way God's worked in my life since then has been incredible. So don't want to do that. But yeah, So yeah, that started a process of a couple of years in my life where I didn't even want to go to the meeting. I was still running Sunday school. I was still involved in everything. And probably from the outside, people probably didn't see much. But I remember going to Bible class, driving to Bible class, and I was in tears because I just didn't want to go. But I knew that if I didn't, and if I gave up coming to Bible class, if I gave up coming to the meetings, there would be no coming back. It would have just destroyed my faith. I knew if I wanted to keep my faith up, I needed to keep growing through that. So I kept going, and eventually God taught me the lesson that I needed to know. And I kept asking, I was saying, look, I've had enough of this trial, God. I've learned what you want me to, I've learned what you want me to, you're trying to teach me. And he wouldn't, just didn't let go. And eventually someone a relative of mine gave me a copy of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Oh yeah, heard of that one, yeah.
Yeah. And in there is a chapter about your center. And he talks about people having all sorts of centers to their life. You might be wife-centered, you might be sports-centered, you might be enemy-centered, so that all your thoughts automatically go to your enemy and how you can do your worst for them, whatever. And I discovered that I was church-centered, which is a good thing. My whole
Totally.
life was built around their pleasure. It's a good thing. But I wasn't God-centered. That was what I believe God was really trying to teach me there, was to be God-centered, to focus my life instead of being working for their pleasure, to work for God. And there's a very subtle difference. And I don't think anyone would have noticed any difference in my actions or anything. But my attitude was really different because now I was serving God instead of their pleasure.
Yeah.
And that's where that trial ended up. And also out of it, one of the other neat things that came out of that trial was just my focus on the Word of God. Now, one of the things I've always done and every day since I was about 15 was to read the Bible in the morning. First thing in the morning, I would at least a chapter of the Bible or so. And at about that time, I was still doing that, but I would open the Bible, read a passage, head off to work, and I would come back the following morning and go, where was I? And I'd struggle to figure out where I was because I wasn't necessarily following the daily readings chart or anything like that. It's like, what was I reading? And I'd find I'd be reading the same verses over and over again. And like, obviously nothing. It was just sort of like straight in, straight out. And so that's when I started. I got myself a diary, actually.
Yeah, you still got it?
That one. Oh, actually,
What?
that's too bad. One. It was one earlier than that. But anyway,
With
and
the All Blacks, yeah. I
yeah,
like
All
it.
Blacks diary, yeah. And in it is a page for a day diary.
Yeah.
And so I wrote down
Wow.
the chapter that I'd read at the beginning and a thought from that reading. Made a massive difference to me. Huge difference. And that way, I could hear God speak and he would tell me things through his word. And it was like, wow, huge difference. So that and being God-centered really brought me out of that trial. Sorry, there we go.
we we go to a community, and I think especially for me as well, like I also grew up a Christadelphian. You just always go on a Sunday, on most Wednesdays, and you got events on Saturdays, and the week is kind of full. You got a lot to do, and in the beginning, I think you go along because maybe your parents go along, and then you suddenly decide, oh, actually, this is quite cool. And for a long time, for me as well, and I feel like I'm still working through this myself, that I'm working through the fact that stuff that's going on in the meeting or the church, whatever you call it, the people that are in charge of it, they all have the best interest at heart. And they all want to do what's right for God, and they all want to follow the example of Jesus. And sometimes it doesn't seem like that to me, it seems like that to you. But the powerful thing is that God put you in that place. But at the end of the day, you need to develop your faith. You need to strengthen your vision of the victory of the kingdom ahead, to get through that together. And I think the church or the meeting that we have being given by God is a community that can help us along that way. But to make use of that, we need to be vulnerable. We need to share with them what we're going through, and that can be very, very difficult. But as you say, stuff gets messy, and at the moment we're also going through a tricky time in our ecclesia in Esslingen, and it really shows you that it's so easy to be like frustrated at the meeting, at things going on. But at the end of the day, God is in charge, and He's given us this challenge, maybe to find back to Him, maybe to connect with Him on this deeper level. And that is fantastic. What you just showed with your notebook, I don't. Mine is in the other room, but I started doing this in the mornings, and I must say, not every morning do I manage to do it, but it's literally a page, sometimes like half a page, where I just write the chapter. It's normally just a random chapter that I started at the beginning, going through, yeah, starting with Genesis. Now I'm in Exodus, so it's taking a while, but just going through, and then what has helped me is just one thought, because there's so many things. But like, how can this one thing be applicable to your life? So I can really connect with that, and that kind of shows me that you started writing. Did that habit then spin off into what we now see pictures of on your wall, like these books that I'll just show the people. Like, I've got this one, which is that you've written, which is Resisting the Devil. This one's also one that I think you and your wife wrote, the wedding one,
Yes.
or all about marriage, which is fantastic. And I just wanted to ask you about that process. Like, when did you realize, hey, maybe I could write a book to help other Christadelphians, other Christians on their work way to the kingdom?
Well, actually, I didn't.
Okay, that's fine.
um, it sort of happened sort of accidentally. So this is the book. This Thank You Things is the first one I wrote. And yes, it is just a compilation out of the diary that you saw and about three or four, about five other diaries. So out of what I'd read from my readings and yeah, compiled them out of that. But what I'd done was when I started writing them, my brother was away Indonesia for a year or two, and I just thought I'll just send him, just an uplifting thought. So I typed one out and emailed it through to him, and he came back and he goes, "Oh, thanks for the little thinky things."
That's the title, right?
So that's where the name started. But,
That's
but
good.
he actually named it. It was Little Thinky Things, and then we dropped the little and ended up with Thinky Things. Yeah, so what I did was I just started sharing it with different people. I thought, oh, well, if I'm sharing it with my brother, then I'll share it with there was a couple of other people that sort of thought I can encourage them. And then gradually people started asking to get my emails. So so I just started regularly emailing them out. And then after a few years of that, people went, "Well, when's the book coming out?" What book? And I never dreamed I would be an author. It was sort of like I looked at books. I like reading, but like writing a book seems like a massive, you know, huge thing.
Totally.
And it is.
Mm.
But anyway, so we just started compiling them and yeah, sorted out a format that we wanted to use, which ended up based on the daily readings. I don't know whether you've seen it, but yeah, based on the daily readings.
Yeah. Y- they're so good. Yeah.
And yeah, gradually it came out, and then a few years later we did the next one. Yeah, so that was how the writing started. Resisting the Devil was a little bit different in that I've always struggled with temptation. Um,
We all do.
I often feel like I struggle more.
Mm.
Every day is a struggle. So yeah, I was sort of like I really wanted to do something about that for myself. At the time, what happened? Oh, here's God playing with my health again. Interestingly, you showed us that we may be one. I'll start
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, this one,
when we
right. Yeah,
wrote
so
that,
cool.
I'd had in mind to do a Thinky Things book for couples, but I compiled a whole lot of stuff. We went, oh, that's horrible. That's not going to work. So anyway, we thought, oh, maybe we should write a book because we're both really keen to build strong marriages. And then I was struggling with my hips, or one hip, And I ended up with 6 weeks off work because I had a hip replacement. And knowing it was coming up, I said to Sharon, I think I need to pre-plan, and we'll write our marriage book at the same time. And so that's what we did. In the 6 weeks that I was off, we managed to write about 2/3 of that book.
That is very impressive. In 6 weeks.
We've done a
Okay.
lot of preparation, and there was a lot of work to go. But yeah, we did that. So that's sort of that one came through again by the health that God had blessed me with. And I really think, the ill health that I've had has been a real blessing. Resisting the devil came about again because of ill health. What happened was, again, I've been really, really busy in the ecclesia, really, really busy. I had a finger in pretty much every pie, and I burnt out. And it really impacted me hugely. I managed to keep working through that, but it was I struggled. It was a massive struggle. And anyway, that was when I was doing in the middle of a series at Bible class on joy, and I burnt out. But it was great. It was great. I finished that series on joy, which was great, and I think that was part of what got me through the burnout.
Mm.
But then I really couldn't do too much in the ecclesia. All my ecclesial life was basically stripped away, completely, completely stripped away. I could barely do speaking anymore, and I used to do a lot of speaking. I used to speak various places, sort of about every couple of weeks. I would be doing some sort of speaking appointment.
Wow.
I had to come off the OBs. That was just too much, and my mental health wasn't working very well. I had to, I basically everything stripped away, and I couldn't do anything. I could barely pray for a while, even at the meeting. I couldn't sing the hymns. It was just too hard. And so here I was at home where I had this incredibly full life, and it was just suddenly taken away, and there was nothing left. And I went, oh well, I can't do anything that is in front of people. I can't do anything that involves pressure. I can't do anything to a deadline, but I can sit down and write my thoughts on resisting the devil. And so that's what I did while I was burnt out. Yeah, great opportunity. Because God gave me the time to do it. And if He hadn't given me the ill health, that never would have happened.
That is such an amazing story of how God can use your lowest points to make them a high point. And I think many people, me included, when we go through the valleys, when we go through hard times, we feel like we're so alone. God can never work with us again. We like this clay that He's just bunched up again and kind of thrown in the corner. But actually, God is trying to remold us. And I feel like looking back, it's always easy to see this had to happen. Like in your case, your health had to be in a bad state for you to then write this book. But like when we were reading this, maybe it's interesting for anyone listening. Like we started this book, and I don't know when did you write it? Was it 2020? Yeah. So it's first published 2018. All right. So we got to read it in lockdown. We had our youth group. We were around 6, 7 to 8 young men, and we were like, okay, we need a book. We need to do something to chat and do it online. So every Monday we met up, and after a while we were like, we need a book, and we found this one, and it was fantastic because the chapters were short, which is always good for boys. Like they don't like reading long chapters.
I wrote it like that because I have a short attention span.
Yeah, and
And I wanted men to read it.
yeah, exactly. And the good thing is it's 40 chapters. So within a year, less than a year, I think we had a few skips, but we got through the whole book, and it was very inspiring to me to open up to some of the young guys who were in their teens, and like I was in my early 20s, and it just had such an impact to see that you're not the only one struggling. That's the first thing, and that there is a way out. And I think in our community in Christadelphia, and maybe a lot of other churches, there are certain topics that we just don't touch because they're uncomfortable to talk about. And This has been the first book that I've been able to read where I felt like, oh wow, Robert is being super vulnerable with us. And that means that I personally can connect to him. I can feel that I'm not the only one going through this. And I know that I can go through with you in this case and with all my other friends in that time in the meeting. And even though it was still difficult, like you still struggle with it, just the small little methods have helped rephrase and reframe my life. So I've been very, very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of strength from
No,
it as
so
well, just writing it. But also, one of the things that's really helped me is when people come up to me and go, I struggle with the same things. And, and when people are vulnerable with me, it really helps me in my personal struggles as well. I mean, I had a brother like that a couple of weeks ago, and he just came up to me and he goes, so, that book you wrote, and we had this great discussion. And we're both blessed by that. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. It's often a two-way thing. But for me, I always feel like it's someone has to start with being vulnerable, saying, hey, I struggle with this. And if people have that courage, then others will be able to share like their deepest secret that they've never told anyone, only because you've been able to open up. So maybe we can touch. Sorry.
And that's why I think why James says, confess your
Hmm.
sins one to another. Because
Yeah,
it because
exactly.
as soon as someone does that, it opens up that vulnerability and it opens up that way for actually helping the next person. It's not about you, it's about helping someone else. Um, and yeah,
Exactly.
sorry, exactly.
No, no, all good. It touches on the same topic because you say helping someone else. Is there someone in your life who was able to then help you in these times, especially with your health? I mean, you could turn to writing, which is fantastic, but was there, I call them maybe a mentor figure or someone that you can totally trust who helped you in those hard times?
They've been, this is one of the questions I sort of went, yeah, you probably don't need to ask that. But however, there's been a lot of people that have been mentors to me over the years and through this time. I don't think there's been any one person or anyone I could specifically say they have been an amazing mentor. Yeah, I actually think Sharon and I were discussing this just before we talked, and we're saying this is an area that from what I've seen as Christian L fans, we don't do very well. We don't generally take someone under our wing and go, I'm going to walk beside you all the way. And, like I found that I can't say I've really had a mentor all the way through. There's been mentors in the ecclesia, there's been mentors here and there, but not necessarily a spiritual mentor. So, yeah, we need that.
Yeah, to be very honest, for me, it's a very similar situation. Like I feel like the German culture as such is very much you do your thing, you do your private thing. Like you go to the meeting, but then come 12 o'clock, well, you have to go home because the dinner lunch has to be done, and then people are out of there half an hour after the meeting ended, and you see each other 7 days later. So it's a very much an approach of like it takes a very long time for people to warm up to you. And I realized that through my wife, Bron, who's from Wales, and she's been living here since 2018. And she said, just a few weeks ago, it's like, wow, this one brother, he's given me a hug, and like I've been here for 5 years, and now I've been able to open up and like just give that hug. And it's not nothing against that person. Like obviously they are lovely and kind, and it's just that it takes a while for people to warm up. And I think to have this mentor role is very powerful, and it has some responsibility as well. And I think through life stages, you have different mentors, which is totally fine. But I'm also seeking out a few people, and it's really difficult to find them in a culture where that is just not given. I was talking to a few Americans last week, and they said, wow, like I've got this mentor here and got them there, and this one's helped me in this way. And it's just like a totally different culture where they have this set up in their meeting, and that's a way that it works for them. But I think that's why this question is so exciting to me, because I can see for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. at the end of the day, you need to find if it works for you and if you can make it work. So that's totally fine. Like I think it's good to have people who it works with and people who don't. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that as well.
I think something, if I can just add to that, something, once you get older, probably like me, is is to find someone that you can mentor. And at the moment, I've actually, there's a brother in our ecclesia, and he and I get together each Tuesday morning, and we pray for each other. And I don't know whether that's what mentoring is about, but because it's never been modelled to me. But we get together for about an hour and a half, and we talk over the week that's been, the week that's coming, and we pray for each other. We just take
That's
notes on
wonderful.
the notebook on the way and go, right, I'm going to pray for you, you pray for me. And yeah, that's been really helpful.
Yeah, and I think that's an amazing attitude because you haven't experienced it, but you're willing to give it to others, which is exactly what I think Jesus would do. That's so fantastic. I'm just thinking, you've written a whole book on marriage. Is there anything in here that you'd like to share with people who haven't been able to read it? Some gems, some tips for people who are maybe just recently married, like we've been married for 2 years. That's not that recent, but
That's much more.
just well, in the long run, it is. Yeah, just anything where you're like, hey, this is something that I'd like to give to people who've just got married or who are thinking about it.
Okay. Probably one of the things I would, actually, there's a few things. Let's start with date nights. Take a date night every week, or afternoon or day. I mean, Sharon and I had ours this afternoon. We didn't do anything special, but we both went out to the supermarket together, and then we had a massage. We just stayed home, and I gave Sharon a massage, and yeah, that was really nice. But also in that date night, you can ask each other the questions. What was your best thing this week? What was your worst thing this week? What was what are you looking forward to in the next week? What was your spiritual highlight? Where are you going spiritually? One question that Sharon often asks me is, how are you going with temptation? That's, I always like that question, but it's worth having it asked. So, yeah, having a date night, a special time when you can actually just connect the two of you is, now, if you've got young kids, that's a little bit more difficult because you're not going to go out and have dinner together or walk along the beach or go to, along to a waterfall or play a game of 10-pin bowling or anything. But what we used to do was, when our kids were young, we would have a Thursday night was 7:30, and all the kids had to be in their rooms at 7:30. I didn't care whether they were asleep or awake or what they were doing, but they were in their room with the door closed at 7:30, and we had the evening to ourselves. And that was our date night. So that would be my first suggestion. The second one would be to pray together. And probably should have been the other way around, really. Pray together because, pray for your wife or your husband, because no one else is going to do that. Pray for your marriage, that your marriage would grow stronger, because there are always going to be trials and temptations. There's always going to be things that you don't like. You haven't come up to that 7-year itch time yet. So pray your way through that. And also pray together, like literally out loud together. And for some sisters, that's quite difficult, but you do get used to it. And praying together is just incredible. There are things that Sharon prays about that I don't even think about. And probably vice versa. Well, let's just, the family that prays together stays together. So those would be my two big pieces of advice.
They're fantastic. Thank you so much. I definitely, yeah, I can relate to that. It's marriage is generally very, very hard. Like it's lovely and I think it's fantastic, but people say that it gets hard, especially because you spend your entire life together and people change and stuff. To have God in the center, to have Him in our prayers is such a key aspect. And I think the thing you touched on with the dates is also so special to reserve this time, to set that boundary, even if you have kids, to say, okay, well, this is the time for mom and dad. I think that's fantastic. That is really something that will take in. We've tried date nights weekly, but sometimes they don't work out and we don't put them in the calendar. So I think that's probably the first step.
Yeah, well, making a habit of it, whether it's Thursday night or Saturday morning or whatever, it's just, you've got to make it. This is what we do at that time, and
Yeah.
otherwise it doesn't work.
Yes. So true, so true. How has your relationship with God and maybe with Jesus as well then developed over the years? Do you feel like you've kind of like you climbing this mountain, you getting closer, or like how can you describe your that relationship for us? That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think, I think everyone. Well, I think my relationship with God is sort of a bit like this.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Or maybe like that. I'm not sure. Sometimes like that, but um, yeah, I think it develops and it wanes with your health and circumstances. But I think, just try to word this properly, we look at things like Bible study as being a thermometer of how close we are to God. How much Bible study have you done? How much prayer time have you done? How much Bible reading have you done? And those are all really important. But I think but when you get to a stage in your life where you've got 4 kids running around, you're heavily involved in the ecclesia, everything, you're working, you've got a mortgage, like life is full. It's really hard at that stage to pinpoint, like, how is my relationship with God growing? And I think what we need to do is to remember that our relationship with God is something that is inherent in every aspect of our lives. We tend to put God in a box and go, here he is on Sunday morning, or here he is in my prayer time or my reading time or whatever. And yet, bringing up a family, being married, working, are all spiritual activities. In fact, bringing up your family may be more important than going to Bible class on a particular Wednesday night, because your family comes first. The person who can't keep his family together shouldn't have a role in the ecclesia, is what Paul says to Timothy. Yeah, my relationship with God has probably changed a lot over the years, and yeah, it has its ups and downs. And when you're struggling with temptation lots, your relationship sort of plummets. When you're out of temptation, when you're having those times when you're not in temptation so much, your relationship can grow. But then also when you're having those down times as well, sometimes you're actually really close to God because you're going, God, just help me. I've got nowhere else to turn.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wouldn't say, sorry, the long answer again. I wouldn't say, I've definitely got a, a relationship with God that's sort of definitely growing or anything like that, but it's a relationship with God that's growing through life stages, or going through life stages, and trying to grow with him in the times and the moments that he's in the trials that he gives us.
Yes, yes, so true. God is not easily put in a box. It's easy for us to think that he's in a box, but he's always there. He's
Yeah,
always there. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who said he started this thing that he heard in a talk where he starts the day saying a prayer and he doesn't say in Jesus' name, Amen. He says that at the end of the day. And so he's got the whole day where he's like trying to live as Jesus would, and everything is a prayer. And I find that
I
quite
love that.
a powerful message, because that's what we should do. And often I myself catch myself thinking of, okay, this is prayer time, this is time for God, this is reading time, this is time for my wife, and everything is put in these boxes like a calendar event. And actually, yeah, God is an all-day event, 24/7, 365. So
Yeah, yeah. And
so good.
yeah, I've just been reading through Job, and one of the things that I really got out of Job as I read it through this last time is their absolute, Job and all his friends have this absolute whole of life perception of God that we don't see. Well, I mean, I'm supposed to talk for myself. I don't always have. I'm a little bit more of a box person. Put him here and put him here, put him here. But Job and his friends had this whole of life perspective, and I just really admire that. And I'm looking forward to developing it more.
Yeah, because life is always a progress, and we keep learning. And I think that's the wonderful thing, that God gave us brains and the ability to continue to learn, to continue to look in his word and find these little gems. Is how can I apply it today? Is there anything that you'd say, this is one habit or this one verse just keeps me going when time gets hard?
Yeah. Romans 8:28, I think it is. That says all things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. And when I had my burnout, there was pretty much 7 years of burnout that I sort of struggled through. Now I think it's 3 years of long COVID. It's coming up to 3 years of long COVID. It was actually the January. I got COVID in June, and it was the January I said to Sharon, I said, I think I would have to say I'm actually over the burnout now. Not what I was, but I'm over the burnout. It's like, so what? I'm sick. So what? I can't do anything. So what? I'm lying on my bed, a crying, sniveling mess. But God's in control. There's got to be a reason for this. And somehow or other, he's going to be glorified through it. And if he's going to be glorified through it, well, that's great. I'm happy. Yeah.
Your outlook on these struggles is quite unique. I think most people would say, oh, well, stuff God, I'll just do my own thing. Like the wife of Job, who was like, just curse God and die.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not an option. That really isn't. Wow.
And God doesn't promise a bed of roses. There's
No.
thorns in it too. And he says that, if you're in him, you're gonna suffer. Yep, fair enough. Um I get it because I sin. I know I'm a sinner. So actually I deserve a lot worse than what I get. But
Yeah.
who am I to complain? All I can do is use those is take the lemons and make lemonade if I can.
That is just so encouraging to us who, I mean, definitely to me, and I feel so blessed that at the moment I don't have health problems of this sort, but I know that there will be things along the road ahead that will be obstacles. So it's so fantastic to have this encouragement. Is there any struggle you'd say, oh well, that's something that Christ would have gone through, and how do you feel his presence along the way right now in your walk with him?
Yeah, I think he went through everything that we do. He struggled with the same temptations. I don't know about ill health, because obviously he had a mission to do. By the same token, sleeping outside, sleepless nights when you pray all night, just the rigors of 3 years, 3.5 years on the road, then being beaten. I mean, the Jews said, oh, you're not even 50 yet. Well, he wasn't. He was only just over 30. Um, so he must have looked pretty haggard. And yeah, I think, yeah, that relates to me. The beatings and everything he would have got, he had. Yes, he might not have had exactly the same things that I've been through, or I might not be going through the same things as he's been through, but the similarities are there. There's enough of them. Yeah, yeah.
That's so
And
good.
he went through it, and he got through it,
Totally.
and there he is. He's alive now.
Exactly. Your vision of the kingdom, how's that formed over the years?
Yeah, that was actually one of the first things I did when we got married. One of the first Bible studies I ever did. Sorry, after I got married, I got a Bible and I just read it through from cover to cover and noted all the verses that talked about the kingdom. And then this is back in 1990. So my parents had given us a computer for our wedding present. And there was no internet. So I couldn't Google, Revelation 22 verse 19 and then copy paste it. I typed them all in. So I had screeds and screeds of computer form paper, with the little things and a 9-pin printer, and I printed them all out. And really having sat there and A, read them, and B, typed or written them all out, made a big impact on my mind as to what the kingdom was going to be like. Yeah, and then a little bit later on, I actually did a Bible class series on the kingdom of God. And that also just brought out a whole lot of other things for me that I'd never thought about before. I mean, take, for example, we should be like him. And First John 3 says, yeah, we should be like him, for we should see him as he is. I just started thinking about what was Jesus like. Well, he could read minds. He could walk on water. He could feed 5,000 with some bread and some loaves. He could manage sleepless nights. And there's just so much that Jesus could do. Yeah, just have a think about it for a bit. And at home, when you're listening to this, have a think about what was Jesus like. We will be like him. And then, if you want to, that'll blow your mind. But if you want to blow it even more, if you want to just pretty much explode your whole brain, think about what he was like after his resurrection. And this is what we will
Yeah.
be like. Because then he could walk through walls, he could time travel, he could know where the fish were. you know, where,
True.
you know, there's just so much. And he was immortal and he could change shape, change. People didn't recognize him, and they didn't recognize him again later. And he could hit the fish on the barbecue without even touching the water. Yeah, we will be like him. And yeah, there's a number of little studies like that I did. It's like, wow, that is incredible. Yeah. So
That is exactly what God is like. He's just so much bigger, and having that vision can seem difficult. But as you say, with Jesus, we have someone who was human, now is immortal, and just having those few verses, chapters after he's risen, that is so inspiring. I always like to think of the kingdom of, hey, what will I be doing? What could my job be? How can we maybe preach in the kingdom? And just having those thoughts, those a vision of the kingdom. Like every morning I try, like, just a few minutes, think, what could it be like? What would it be like? What do I want my life to be like as well? And that just those few minutes really make a big impact.
one of the
Yeah.
other
So
issues,
I think, go ahead.
one
Yeah.
of the other things I've been thinking about recently is I've been reading through a bit of Revelation, and I the the enthusiasm of what it shows we will be like in the kingdom. And I heard a great multitude, and they were singing praises. And you go, wow, here we are in the kingdom. We've just seen the earth burned up, or the not the earth burned up, but the judgments of everyone else, and we haven't been part of them, and we've been saved by the blood of the Lamb, and we're in this kingdom, and it's perfect and it's amazing. Why wouldn't you sing praises? You know, that you would just have to sing because this is just like the best thing that's ever happened to you. You could have been out there, outside with the dogs and the sorcerers and the murderers and everything like that, but no, we're not. We're in with Christ. And like, wow, what a picture. And it's not what we'll be doing or anything, it's the happiness and the joy and the excitement and the praise we will feel in the kingdom. And I think those are the aspects of the kingdom we also need to think about.
That is so amazing to hear that, and especially from you. You've been through a lot of hard times, and I think this might be a good time to, if you want to, share what it is that you'd like to tell young people, people of any age really, who are in their valleys, who are in the low times, who can't see their victory, who can't see the top of the mountain. What is it you'd like to share with them?
I think I would like to share that verse I said before. All things work together for good to those that love God. God is in control. He's working in your life. And if you give him the chance, he will bring you into his kingdom. Yeah, that's what I'd like to share with young people. And also, the other thing I'd like to share is that very often, as they did for me earlier on, the trials come from within the ecclesia, because the ecclesia is, it's made up of people. And as we know, all people, all men are sinners. We're all going to get stuff wrong. I mean, there was a massive crowd around Jesus when they yelled out, "Crucify, crucify him," and they all did it. You know? So even the people then, they all wanted him crucified. Sometimes it can happen in the ecclesia as well. We don't want it to be like that, but there's often people problems. Don't turn away from Christ because of the attitudes of other people. Christ doesn't have that attitude. Don't try and see Christ in those people. Christ for them. Even if they don't listen, and they didn't listen to him either, but, just focus on Christ and do your best for him. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Thank you so much. Thank you for spending this last hour talking to me, talking to everyone who's watching and listening. I've got lots of super exciting things that I get to try, new experiments that I want to include in my life. So thank you for sharing this. Is there any way people can connect to you? I know you have a website where you have your books on there and stuff. Is there any other way you want people to reach out to you?
Well, you can find me at www.thinkythings.com, or you can email me, robert@thinkythings.com. And so the phone number, the email address is very similar to the website address. Those are probably the best ways to get in touch. So, and I'd love to hear from you. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone else for listening. This has been episode 5 of the Valley to Victory podcast. And thank you, Robert, so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.